There is no such thing as Plato's theory of the forms. That is just a bit of silliness invented by commentators on Plato and perpetuated by people who repeat what they heard. What there is in Plato, though, is a lot of really insightful discussion of matters of form and matters of the ideal. And that's what we're going to talk about. You can add, right? 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. You know those things are right. Notice what your knowledge is like there. When you say those things, you're recognizing something that's absolutely true, and your recognition is absolutely certain. It's remarkable. And 1 plus 1 exactly and precisely equal 2. But notice also that though you grasp perfectly what 1 is and what 2 is and what equality is, you've never come upon in the world anything that is exactly and precisely 1, or things that are exactly and precisely 2, or two things that are exactly and precisely equal to each other. If you get two cobs of corn, 1 cob of corn plus 1 cob of corn, 2 cobs of corn, true enough. But each of those things wasn't really exactly a 1. It had many seeds, it had both length and width, it had color and taste, all kinds of things. You call it 1, but it wasn't exact. And, if you look at 2 cobs of corn and you say, oh, this is equal to that one because they're each 1, yeah, insofar as they're each 1, yes, that's right. But they don't exactly equal each other. And you'll never find 2 things that are exactly equal. You'll never find a thing that is exactly and exclusively 1. But notice, even though you'll never find that, that doesn't change the reality of equality. It doesn't change the truth of that insight, and indeed, the power of that insight in leading you to be able to make sense of the world around you. Right? In recognizing that 1 plus 1 equals 2 and 2 plus 2 equals 4, you really are recognizing the way reality works. Right? It's what everything answers to, even though you will never find those exact things. Also, you could recognize a horse when you see one, right? And also, you recognized the tomatoes growing in your garden, right? But notice in each of those cases, too, you're seeing a situation where it is a horse that's growing up. In other words, you don't just recognize some arbitrary set of physical changes that could be anything. To recognize something as a horse is to recognize that it's gonna do the horse thing, right? When a little horse colt is born, you know it's not going to grow up to be an elephant or a human being. You know it's going to go through all the changes that horses grow through to realize that sort of species identity of a horse. And similarly, you recognize a tomato plant growing in your garden, which means you know that there's such a thing as, what it is to be a tomato. And you recognize this changing physical process as, how would you put it, the manifestation of, or the realization of, just what it is to be a tomato. And it's already decided in that thing that it's going to be the full-grown tomato plant if it doesn't die. It's already decided in that colt that it's going to be a full-grown horse if it doesn't die, right? It's not going to be something else, right? So you recognize natural species, and you recognize the phenomenon of growth. And in that, you're seeing something very similar to what we just saw with number, right? With number, you are recognizing in reality a structure that is real and that it is the very meaning of what you witness in things, even though in their reality, they don't really measure up to it. And similarly, there isn't anything you're ever going to see that is exactly a perfect horse. They're all different. They're all kind of weird. But nonetheless, what it is to be a horse is what actually explains why they go through those changes that they do. Also, sometimes you probably find yourself saying, that should be done this way or that. Or you say, this is better than that, right? And in doing that, you invoke the notion of the good. Sometimes you say, oh, that's really beautiful. Could be a work of art or a person. You say, he or she is really beautiful. You invoke the notion of beauty. Sometimes you say, that's not fair, right? You invoke the notion of justice, right? Well, good, beautiful, the just, same thing, right? In each of those cases, when you're saying that shouldn't be the case, or when you say this is better than that, you're recognizing goodness as what's really happening there. And yet, those things, like the one corn cob or the tomato plant in your garden, those things are never goodness as such, right? You're never going to find goodness as such or beauty as such or justice as such roaming around somewhere. You're only going to find good things, beautiful things, just things. But in each one of those, you're going to find the same duality that we saw with number and with animals, right? A duality between the ideal it's defined by. And I say defined by, it's not an arbitrary thing you make up, like that's what it's really about. And the finite and kind of one-sided way it's realized that, right? The imperfect way it's realized that. In each of these things, in our intelligent apprehension of the number of things, in our recognition of the types of animals and plants, living things, and in our grappling with those things we aspire to, those ideals of truth and beauty and justice, in all of those cases, we are recognizing that the things of our world have as their reality the fact that they are defined by these forms, these ideals that they answer to, but that they never measure up to. It's built into our very relationship to reality that we recognize that distinction between the ideals, the forms to which things answer, and the imperfect way in which those things are realized.